Hello everybody, it's Josh Halpern, the vanbassador here again, and we are taking a trip today to Africa. I stopped in on Juliet Anammah, Chairwoman of Jumia Nigeria and Head of Institutional Affairs at Jumia Group. If you don't know Jumia, in their own words, they are the largest pan-African e-commerce platform to date, running across 11 countries, 6 regions, and they have 40 million products, restaurants, and services, including Jumia Marketplace, Jumia Logistics, and Jumia Pay. So, if you haven't placed Africa on your global expansion roadmap, you may want to listen to see what Juliet has to say. Let's check it out.
My name is Juliet Anammah, and my background actually started in pharmaceuticals. So I had my first 8 years of professional experience. I was in sales and marketing in pharmaceuticals. So you can say that I cut my sales teeth, so to speak, in pharmaceutical marketing. I was working with Sanofi Aventis, which is a European pharmaceutical company. They had one of their local operating entities in Nigeria. I was in the sales and marketing then. So then after 8 years, in 1999, I left for Accenture. So I joined Accenture. I wanted to broaden my understanding of business beyond pharmaceuticals. And then I joined the strategy service line in Accenture. Eventually, I got to set up our consumer goods practice in West Africa in Accenture. And then I grew the practice, managed it as a partner. And then in 2015, I decided to explore the opportunity that I saw coming up in e-commerce as a critical channel for consumer goods. And that I took up the role to be the Chief Executive Officer for Jumia in Nigeria. Jumia was just about 3 years old at the time because the company started in Nigeria in 2012. And so I ran the Nigeria business till January this year, so roughly about 5 years I was the CEO in Nigeria, and then January this year I decided to transition to my new role. Currently I have a dual role, so I'm chairman of Jumia Nigeria, and in addition to that I have a second role, which is head of institutional affairs for Jumia across the 11 countries in Africa where we operate. And that's really understanding that there's a very close link between business and society, and there are many other non-market factors that impact digital economy in Africa, be they social, cultural, regulatory, or government. And it's in my new role, I look at all of those kinds of issues and see how we play it in such a way that we keep a stable environment in Africa for our type of business to thrive.
Very helpful. Okay, so in a nutshell, give us the footprint of Jumia: users, countries, current state of affairs.
So Jumia is in 11 countries. Okay, so 11 countries that are basically covering about 70% of the GDP in Africa. And again, about 76% of all the internet, roughly 76% of all the internet users in Africa. Africa is about 1.3 billion people. So we are in those 11 countries in West, Eastern part, as well as the North, and then South Africa as well. Nigeria is roughly about 25% of the business within the 11 countries where we operate. Now, Jumia started in Nigeria, like I said, in 2012. And then over time, we've grown. Of course, when we started essentially the same way you would imagine a new e-commerce platform in an environment, a new environment starting off. So we started off with, of course, providing a platform for transaction between sellers and consumers. That's the core of our business. And then we expanded that into also setting up a logistics network, because we found that was very important. And the way we do logistics is it's not necessarily that we own the logistics assets. What we do is that we've invested in the technology that runs logistics. So, and then we integrated third-party 3PLs who basically have the assets, and then they use our technology to then deliver to consumers on behalf of our sellers. So we integrated a logistics network, and then of course we've also built out our own payment solution, which is called Jumia Pay. So that's how we've been evolving our business model over time. To date, as of our last Q2 2020 numbers, we have roughly about 6.8 million active consumers. In Africa, over 110,000 sellers and partners, and that's including brands as well as local distributors of brands and also local individual sellers who are selling on our platform.
So let's talk first domestically. How does it work? A consumer lists their product on the marketplace, and then especially in Africa, is it hard to get them their product delivered? And does it go to a central Jumia warehouse and then out? How does that work domestically? When I say domestically, I mean within the region of Africa, which is already not domestic.
I mean, so I think the first thing to understand that distribution has to date been one of the most difficult challenges for manufacturers, for distributors in Africa, right? That's always been a big challenge for many reasons. Things around address systems, just those basic infrastructural challenges and so on. But the way we built our logistics network more or less solves that problem. So back to your question of how does it work? So if I'm a seller, we have a standard dropship model, and we also have what we call fulfilled by Jumia model, depending on the type of products. So of course you have fast moving items which need to be in a Jumia fulfilled by Jumia model, because then it's in our warehouse, and once a consumer places an order for that item, we ship directly from the warehouse, right? So we got it on consignment from the seller in our warehouse. But then we also have a dropship, which is it's not in the warehouse, so it's not fulfilled by Jumia. In this case, the seller, once the consumer places the order, the seller ships the item to us within predefined KPIs of timelines, depending on the type of item that it is, and where the consumer is located. He ships it to our hubs, and then from our hubs, we do the last mile delivery to the consumer. And in this last mile, of course, is where, like I mentioned earlier, we have a network of logistics partners who pick the packages from our hubs and deliver to the consumers to their addresses.
What are the top categories of products being sold online in Africa?
It's everything. You can imagine assortment is key. The consumers want to buy. I think initially when we started, let's say 2012, 2013, people were looking for high value items, right? That they typically wanted to make sure that we're buying the right quality, authentic items, and also they could do a better price comparison because it was online. And so of course we had phones, we had electronics, we had computers, we had white goods and so on. But we also, over time, that assortment category-wise has widened. Okay, now we have fashion items, we have health and beauty items. The platform, we even have some OTC pharmaceuticals on the platform rather, and increasingly over time, especially this past 6 months or 7 months in a COVID environment, people now realize that, look, even the basic grocery items that they need, so they want to buy toilet paper, or they want to buy just basic cleaning items for the home, they can actually order them online as well. So we see that is the same evolution, is the same evolutionary trend when it comes to e-commerce and how it evolves in the region. People start off with those kinds of discretionary items, and then eventually becomes a platform where they buy their basic day-to-day items. So we've seen that also from our own history.
I would imagine COVID has accelerated that process, though. Have you seen a marked increase in user base and in general transactions?
It's a combination of many things. So, of course, as a business, we're also looking at how we grow our profitable usage of our platform. So we've put in quite a number of other things in terms of partnerships with relevant brands that consumers want to buy their items, right? As well as tightening in terms of shipping metrics and identify how the routes, the shipping routes, logistics routes, what are the best ways to do all of this. Those kinds of things are also part of how we make it more attractive over time. But when it comes to, I would say what has happened is a greater awareness, right? Even to non-consumers of e-commerce prior to COVID. That post-COVID is a greater awareness that, look, this is really the way that you can place orders of items and still maintain physical distancing and so on. So it has, to an extent, used the consumer awareness, yes.
Real quick, in terms of also cash on delivery, have you seen a decrease in cash on delivery now with COVID because of the touch-based kind of transactions being more problematic?
To be honest, I haven't looked at the recent numbers. Possibly when next report, our next earnings release comes up, it might be reflected there. But we do see growth in transactions on Jumia Pay. Mm-hmm. Jumia Pay is a payment solution. Like I said, it's an agnostic. Just think PayPal.
Right.
So whatever payment method that a consumer has, they can basically integrate it with their Jumia Pay account. So we've seen growth in transaction payment volume on our platform, but I haven't actually looked at the split between COD and prepaid. But one thing I do say, yes, there was a lot of greater appreciation of the fact that cashless payment methods were much safer, right? Okay. We had a lot of reports on that being a trend going forward. And even in the middle of the COVID crisis, I remember in some countries we had evolved some solution using short code that allowed consumers such that even if they hadn't prepaid already, either through their mobile money account or their debit card before the item comes for delivery, that they could still use a cashless means of payment at the point of delivery.
Okay, so let me ask you this. From an outside of Africa merchant or brand, what is the best way to get in and online in Africa?
So one of the methods is, of course, people use a local distributor. Okay, so they have a local distributor, and the local distributor basically carries their full product catalog, and you can list that on the platform. In the future, as we try to build out our fulfillment infrastructure to allow, more of cross-border, I would say, Jumia Global, because we have a small portion of our business is called Jumia Global. As we build that out, then I think there'll be more of direct to consumer through the platform. But I think the best option at the moment would really be looking for a local to work with.
What are some of the initial countries that we should look at if we're trying to find the distributor and just incrementally get into Africa in general? Obviously, there are lots of different markets. As you said, you guys are in 11 of those markets. But if I had to shortlist, does it depend on product category, price point, anything you can tell us about that?
I think it depends really on product category. And of course, it has to be based on the brand's own strategic objectives. What do they want to achieve in Africa, right? But if you were looking for, I think really, quite frankly, is down to the brand's objectives and the category that they're playing, to be honest.
Okay, so let me give you an example. I don't know if this is helpful, but it's helpful for our clients to understand. In less than generalities, if I'm a skincare company, that particularly is focused on rehydration, sun exposure, and I'm looking to get into the market. My price point, is there an idea of price point that would be optimal for a certain market and not the other? And which markets would you suggest to start with?
I would say that, look, when it comes to price point, it varies, it still varies from category to category. But if I could use fashion as an example, so if I switch to fashion, it tends to be a sweet spot because you also have to realize we have a market, we have a predominant number of young people. And so affordability is also key. And if you ask me at this particular point in time when Africa is more or less in a recovery mode from the COVID, the impact of COVID, affordability is very important to people. So I would go by the things that we see people looking for. I would go by the kinds of subcategories where we see a lot of interest in. And in the last 6 months or so, we've seen increasing interest, regardless of country, on fast-moving consumer goods. We've seen increasing interest in health and beauty products. We've seen increasing interest in fashion items within price points of 10 euros, 20 euros, 30 euros kind of range. So those kinds of affordable items that are everyday use kind of items, those are the ones, and it's agnostic when it comes to country. You see the same trend, whether it is in Morocco or it's in Egypt or in Nigeria.
Obviously, I know you're working a lot with Chinese companies selling into Africa. The price point would probably be different than the US and Europe. Do European and US price points even play in Africa? And what would you say to that scenario?
I think that right now, I'm not so sure how well US companies have made a strategic intent, right, to appeal to the African consumer. And because that's where it has to start from. It has to start from there, and then understanding the I would say the specs that are important for the African consumer and the relevant price points, which, like I said, differs category by category. The example I gave you was really around fashion. Then you can, I don't think that there's any lack of innovation ability to be able to then fit a particular product range that is suitable for the African consumer. But I don't know right now if US companies have made such a strategic intent, because that's where it's going to start from.
What would it look like to have a strategic intent to sell into Africa?
So if I want to use like I use fashion as an example, okay. So what kinds of fashion items would be relevant when you look at a consumer market that in Africa the average age is about 19, right? But I think its latest numbers is about 18. Okay, that's the average age. Then so what are they going to be looking for? They're going to be looking for T-shirts. They're looking for easy kind of wearable items that are affordable, right? So when you think from that perspective, then that defines the type of products that are relevant. Then when you think about it from, okay, what is the final price to the consumer? What's the final cost to own it, right? Then it defines your distribution network as a brand. Does it make sense for you to ship to a distributor in Africa, or does it make sense for you to have some, I would say, even if it's not a full manufacturing base in Africa, but it can use some of certain pre-manufactured parts and can do the finishing on the continent. Okay. All of that has implications on the operating model, right? Especially upstream as well as downstream. So those are the ways I would.
When we talk about directing to different markets in Africa, at least data-wise, what are the more affluent countries or markets we should be looking at?
Every country has a combination. That's the thing with Africa, especially when you look at when I gave, like the example I gave you on the age bracket, the average age in Africa. Every country has a combination of affluent, middle class, as well as people who have very low disposable income at the end of the day. Okay? So and we have all of them on Jumia. So you have both the affluent, you have the middle class, you also have people who probably all they earn in a month is about $200. My driver, who earns roughly $200 or $300 in a month, shops on Jumia as well.
What would be the average cart value in Jumia, depending on the market, or is it all all in?
So I missed
the average cart value when somebody goes to purchase on Jumia. What's the average total value of the products at any given time when they purchase?
Oh, you mean the average basket size?
Yeah.
In terms of average order value, I think it differs, quite honestly. I don't have the recent numbers.
What I'm trying to establish is when our companies are listening to this, they want to know, is my product even worth exploring? It's $75 for 100 milliliter skincare. It's a $25 blouse. It's a $10 homeopathic baby medicine product. Giving them the impetus to kind of go ahead and make a strategic plan to get into Africa, I need to feed them with a little bit more about what's the opportunity and what would be the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a range of, so look at, I'll give you examples why it's not an average. Right? You can have an average across with multiple categories on the platform. It ranges from, for example, a phone category, which in Nigeria I would say is about 40,000 naira. You can do the rough math about that. It might be about $100 or thereabouts, or slightly less than that. Okay. So white goods would be the range of about the same. And then you have beauty products. The hair growth products could be in the range of 3,000, 4,000 naira, which again, it's probably about $10 or $12. And then you could also have a range of things about like, recharge phone bills, because people prepaid is the major contract in Africa when it comes to telcos, right? We don't have postpaid, which you have significantly in America. So that could be like $5, right? It could be like $5 or max $10. So I would say when it starts getting to $60, $70, $80, then it is really targeted as a specific niche. But if it's a product that needs to be mainstream, if the intent of the product is mainstream, then it really is within that $10, $25, $35, because then it can be a broad base of products. It could be health and beauty, it could be fast-moving consumer goods, anything that people use on a daily basis. Yeah.
Okay, Juliet, question about how, when we're looking for a distributor, we should vet distributors. How do we find, and what are the questions we should ask distributors if we want them to help us get online in Africa?
It'd be good to have distributors who are already online. Even if this is my personal advice, even if the distributor is not necessarily one that has experience in your specific category. Why do I say that? You can, as a brand, as a company, you can help the distributor to understand your particular products. You can provide training, marketing materials and all that. But the one thing that takes time for distributors to learn is how to sell online.
Okay.
That takes a little bit of time to learn. So what I would suggest, if I were in a position to say, look for a distributor who's currently online, someone who's already selling online, and then support him with learning how to manage your own specific product line.
Does Jumia have a list like Alibaba or Tmall does, of preferred Jumia partners / distributors, or some way to find a partner through Jumia?
We have what we call seller rating. So we have seller ratings which tell you the how efficient the seller has been, because it tracks many things. Although it was designed for consumers to understand and differentiate between, of course, if I click on a product and I want to see who's the best seller that I want to buy from on Jumia, I want to see the ratings, right? But then it also speaks to many things which are important to a brand or a company that's looking for partners. Because it talks about shipping speed, it talks about the fact that they haven't had any issues in terms of product returns, shipping the wrong item to the consumer, or any other thing that could detract from their seller rating. So I would go with seller rating. Basically.
That's huge. What is the URL to find, or do we know, or you can give it to us after the seller ratings? Where do you find this? Is it public or active?
No, it's public. You actually see it on the platform for every seller.
Okay.
It's visibly displayed. Yeah.
Do you break it out at all in terms of sellers that are bringing products from outside of Africa in? Are there a significant amount that are bringing products, for example, from Europe and the US and North America in general?
No, we don't break it. I don't think we break it down that way, actually. And to some of the, if you look at some of the products like really highly engineered products, electronic products, even if most likely we have local distributors, but these things are actually brought from outside of Africa because they are not currently manufactured in Africa.
How viable of a solution is it for me to set up a website that's Africa focused using Jumia Pay and actually grab an audience versus being on a marketplace directly?
Sorry, could you replay that again?
Sure. You mentioned Jumia Pay is agnostic, meaning it can be anywhere. It's like PayPal.
Oh yeah. Okay. So let me clarify that. So Jumia Pay is agnostic from a consumer perspective. We don't insist that it has to be a particular payment method. But for now, it's still only available on the Jumia platform.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah, that's it.
Can we talk quickly about marketing? Obviously, there's marketing inside Jumia, like you would also on an Amazon, where you want to understand the marketing, and then marketing outside. Could you first talk about how you might build a brand outside in the digital space in Africa?
Oh yeah. So from a marketing perspective, we have also started to offer. We started probably last year or so, Jumia advertising. So this allows different brands to actually advertise to consumers on our platform. It doesn't have to be that a brand has its products listed yet on our platform. You can just buy a Jumia advertising, pretty much like if you were to buy advertising on Facebook or Google or Amazon. Any brand can do that. So that could be a means for a brand. And we've had experience of brands who had never been in Africa before, started by advertising on Jumia, listing on Jumia, and then eventually becoming much more operational in the market and having a full-time office and not just dealing with a distributor and so on. Because it gives them an opportunity to understand the consumers before they make the final investment to set up their own office.
But we're saying you'd still list yourself on Jumia, but then you fulfill from overseas.
No, they have like a local distributor.
Okay, so they found a local distributor, but they haven't really done anything practically. They start advertising.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Because I'm trying to figure out if companies can start seeding the brand, as you said, before they even have the listing. But it doesn't make much sense because there's actually no transaction. But what percentage of online shoppers are shopping on marketplaces versus direct on websites? Do you know?
After 2020, post-COVID, you might have a lot more because of the sudden understanding everybody now has of digital, right? That you may have more, some small companies setting up their own websites. But as far as e-commerce is concerned in Africa at the moment, it's the marketplace model that is prevalent because it's the marketplace that has been the operating model in Africa for the past 8 years, thereabout. So people instinctively know that if they want to buy something, they go to a marketplace like Jumia and they buy the item from Jumia. And also they want, I guess, unless you're looking for one type of item, but people come to marketplaces not just because they want to buy, they also want to consume content. So if I look at last year, for example, by 2019, I think during Black Friday 2019, we had over 1 billion visits, right, on our platform. And that's because people want to consume content. They are coming, it's not just, sometimes they want to buy something. Yes, they buy something, but at other times it's also like, Jumia is a place where I can browse and see different things and so on. So the marketplace model is, I would say, is prevalent versus the direct to website like you have in the US.
Okay, that's great. Any additional advice you have for companies from, let's say, North America trying to get into Africa?
The advice I would have is try to resist the temptation of, here's what I have in America, I'm just going to force fit it into Africa, okay? It won't work. Even for us, anyone can argue and say, well, you know, the marketplace model is a well-established model. Yes, it is a well-established model, but there are many things which we had to customize for the African environment. You talked about cash on delivery. That's one of the things we had to customize because we needed to win the trust in the local environment. We had to adapt. We couldn't have one single USPS or UPS do all the delivery for us. We had to integrate like multiple partners in every country, because sometimes you have a guy who just has 5 tricycles and that guy knows this particular city. He knows every woman who's selling something under a tree. He knows every school child who visits, you know. So that's the way it works in Africa. So the same mindset I would really recommend, and it's a very clear understanding of the demographic you want to target in Africa, the particular category and how it fits well within that demographic. And I give some examples of price points. And then you have to think about your operating model. What does that mean for you from a route to market perspective? Can you have a distributor, or can you have some of your items pre-packaged and then finished in Africa? Those are all business decisions that you need to take.
2 questions that brings up. One is, I'd love to hear some specific examples of localizing content. And if you have any examples of specific differences between going into Nigeria versus other markets, because people keep lumping them in, even in our discussion, Africa, but are there nuances between the markets? That's one major question.
The best example I can give is, I remember a particular product that was very successful in Nigeria, and it's a product that's it's a hair care product. Apparently, it's something to do with hair growth, and it's a small product in terms of size, and I think it's about 10 mils or 30 mils or thereabouts, but proved to be quite popular in Nigeria. Hair pieces are very popular in Nigeria, but clearly not so in Morocco or Egypt. So those kinds of differences exist in the different countries. Yeah.
Certification-wise, in certain markets, you can sell direct to a consumer and not have to register with the FDA equivalent in country. You know, if I'm selling, I don't have to have baby, you know, if I have, let's say, a skincare product, I don't have to have animal testing if I'm going direct to consumer in a market, whereas otherwise, if I'm going to wholesale, I have to get registered. Are there certain loopholes or opportunities if you're going direct? Does Africa or certain countries in Africa require, even if you're selling through a marketplace direct from outside, certain registrations?
For some products, yes. Clearly, when it comes to pharmaceutical products, quite a number of consumer products also. It depends on the country and the regulators that exist in the country. Certainly, we like to make sure that all our sellers are in compliance with the rules that apply in any country. Some countries, of course, if it's examples I can give, it's like if it's a mobile phone, there needs to be registration with the National Communications Commission. That product needs to be properly registered in the country. Even if it's a new brand that coming into the market. And for some consumer, but in a number of consumer products, because there's already been a registration of similar products, things like that, I think makes it a bit easier. But different markets have the different rules, and we, as much as possible, try to tell our sellers to make sure that they're in full compliance with what exists in the market.
And do you help I presume the local distributors figure some of that out, or is it pretty much their responsibility?
It's their responsibility, and where we see that it is required, then we make it important, a requirement for them that they must do it before they can list the product.
Okay. Yeah. Juliet from Jumia, where are you living right now?
At the moment, I'm in Leesburg, Virginia.
What is the single item you miss most from Nigeria when you're here?
I miss, you wouldn't even know how to call it. It's called akara.
Akara. What is akara?
It's a bean cake.
Okay. So we have to work on getting African sellers to get that over here quick enough before it spoils, I presume.
Yeah, I've ordered the powder that makes it on Amazon, but it's not quite the same.
Okay. Well, again, Juliet from Jumia, we're a lookout for the akara bun that you'll be selling on Amazon hopefully soon. But thanks again for joining us and for downloading all your knowledge, a wealth of knowledge around the African market online. And we will definitely keep in touch. And if anyone has any questions, please, of course, leave them below, contact us, and we'll figure out how to facilitate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, Josh.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, that was really helpful for me to understand what consumers are doing online and in Africa. And of course, it's still probably pretty challenging to go D2C to Africa. But marketplaces are one of the fastest ways and the best ways to enter a new market because of all the reasons around optimizing your experience, your user experience, taking efficiencies of scale for their shipping and their logistics. But we may want to wait until Jumia unlocks the Fulfillment by Jumia scenario so that you can ship your products to a warehouse in the US and let them take it from there. Meanwhile, let's get back on the road. To support our journey, please subscribe, follow us, stay local, go global. This is Van Bassador.